If you're a Sigma INFJ, you understand people so profoundly that you can predict their moves before they make them. And that's exactly why the people you understand best can exploit you most effectively. This video reveals why your greatest gift becomes your most profound vulnerability. You're not broken, you're operating exactly as designed. But you need to understand the mechanism. Sigma INFJs are rare. We're talking about perhaps 1 in 1,000 personality types. You're not just INFJ. You're an INFJ who has rejected the conventional path, operated outside normal social hierarchies, and developed an almost unnerving ability to see through people and systems simultaneously. You can read a room, predict outcomes, understand hidden motivations, and navigate complex emotional terrain that would destroy most people. You're the ones who notice what everyone else misses, the ones who see the cracks before the building falls, the ones people come to when they need someone who actually understands. And here's what most people don't realize about Sigma INFJs, that understanding you possess is so precise, so nuanced, that it becomes a vulnerability in the hands of people who don't have your integrity. Because you see the good in people so clearly, you see their potential so vividly, that you're willing to stay in situations far longer than you should. You believe in second chances, because you can see exactly how someone could change. You understand their trauma, their justifications, their rationalization. And that understanding becomes the very thing that keeps you trapped. Let's start with the phenomenon we might call the perfect mirror. Here's what makes this so deeply strange about Sigma INFJs. You don't just adapt to people. You reflect what they need so precisely that you become a kind of emotional mirror they can't help but keep looking into. You instinctively know what someone needs from you. Not consciously, but automatically. A person walks into a room feeling invisible, and somehow around you they feel seen. Someone comes to you carrying shame about something they've never told anyone, and they immediately know they can trust you with their deepest truth. You're not doing this deliberately, you're simply reading their internal landscape so accurately that you present yourself in a way that makes them feel safe. You become what they need. But here's where it becomes genuinely unsettling. Whilst you're mirroring them so accurately, they're simultaneously losing the ability to see you. You're so focused on becoming what they need, that your own reality starts disappearing from their perception. They look at you and see their savior, their healer, their understanding guide. But they don't see you. Not really. They see what they need. And because you're so skilled at disappearing into that role, they genuinely forget there's another person in there. A person with needs. A person with limits. A person who is also human. This creates a deeply paradoxical situation where the person you understand most completely is the one who understands you the least. They know your patterns, your responses, your way of being. But they don't know who you are when you're not being what they need. And the terrifying part is that some people, once they understand this about you, learn to use it. They realize that you'll keep showing up, that you'll keep mirroring, that you'll keep caring, and they begin to exploit that knowledge. The second mechanism is what we might call the prediction trap. And this one reveals something genuinely tragic about how Sigma INFJ consciousness works. You can predict how situations will unfold with extraordinary accuracy. You see the pattern, you run the simulation in your mind, and you know how it ends. But here's where it becomes dangerous. That ability to predict makes you believe you can control outcomes. If you can see it coming, maybe you can prevent it. Maybe this time will be different. An INFJ stays in a relationship with someone they know will eventually hurt them because they've seen 1,000 different futures, and they're convinced that if they respond in exactly the right way, if they just understand deeply enough, if they just love consistently enough, maybe this person will choose differently. Maybe they can predict the ending and change it, but that's not how it works. The pattern doesn't change because you understand it. The person doesn't transform because you see their potential. And what happens instead is that the Sigma INFJ stays trapped in a cycle of predicting destruction whilst believing they can prevent it. They watch it happen exactly as foreseen, and then they try again, because they can see the exact moment where it could have gone differently. The exact word that could have shifted everything, the exact choice that could have prevented the pain. They know precisely what went wrong. And that knowledge becomes a torture mechanism. You didn't just suffer the betrayal, you suffered it whilst knowing exactly how it would happen. You watched it unfold in real time, like a movie you'd already seen. And that creates a particular kind of exhaustion that most people never experience. The third phenomenon is what we might call the pattern recognition curse. Here's what makes this deeply paradoxical. Sigma INFJs see red flags with stunning clarity. You can spot the warning signs that others completely miss. You notice the small resentment that's going to grow into a massive conflict. You see the incompatibility that's going to end the friendship. You recognize the manipulation tactic before it's fully deployed. You know exactly who can't be trusted. And then you watch people you care about ignore every single warning you've given them. You tell them what you see. You try to explain the pattern. You offer your perspective. And they don't listen. They think you're being pessimistic or projecting your own fears onto their situation. They believe their version of the person. They trust their interpretation of the pattern. And then, inevitably, exactly what you predicted happens. The person you warned them about betrays them. The relationship you saw as unsustainable falls apart. The situation deteriorates exactly as you foresaw. And when it does, the people around you are shocked, devastated, confused about how they didn't see it coming. Meanwhile, you're standing there thinking, yeah, I called this 6 months ago. But here's what makes this a curse rather than just an ability. You don't get satisfaction from being right. You get exhaustion. Because being right meant watching someone suffer something you could have prevented if they'd just listened. Being right means carrying the weight of foreknowledge that no one else has. Being right means you're isolated in your understanding, whilst everyone else is caught off guard. And over time, some Sigma INFJs start second-guessing themselves. They see the pattern so clearly, but they've been dismissed so many times, that they begin to wonder if they're wrong. Maybe they are too negative, maybe they are projecting. And then, when the pattern unfolds exactly as predicted, they realize they've learned the wrong lesson. They've learned to doubt their own knowing rather than trust it more. The fourth mechanism is what we might call the invisible boundary. Most people have natural boundaries. They say no, they pull back, they create distance. But Sigma INFJs have a particular kind of curse. You can read what people need so profoundly that you automatically adjust to provide it. Someone needs you to be available, so you become available. Someone needs you to listen endlessly, so you listen endlessly. Someone needs you to solve their problems, so you keep trying to solve their problems. You don't set these boundaries consciously. They just don't exist in your internal landscape the way they do for other people. A normal person feels that boundaries protect them. A Sigma INFJ feels boundaries as something that separates them from the people they care about. So you don't enforce them. You keep going, you keep showing up, you keep trying. And the people around you, especially those who use you, learn this about you. They realize they can ask more. They can demand more. They can take more. And there's no line where you say stop. There's no point where you protect yourself. They're only increasing levels of depletion whilst you keep trying to give them what they need. This creates relationships in which the other person gradually extracts more and more from you, whilst you simultaneously become less and less yourself. You're pouring from an empty cup, you're giving from a place of absolute exhaustion. And the person receiving your energy knows this. They can feel your depletion. But rather than stepping back, they often intensify their demands. Because they sense you're weakening and they want to extract as much as possible before you finally break. The fifth mechanism is what we might call the loyalty weapon. Here's what makes this genuinely devastating about Sigma INFJ nature. You're extraordinarily loyal. Not blindly loyal. Loyally aware. You understand people's flaws completely. and you choose to stay anyway. You see exactly why someone hurt you, and you forgive it because you understand the context. You could leave, but you choose to stay, because you've calculated that staying is worth it. You believe in people's capacity to change. You believe in redemption. You believe loyalty itself is a virtue worth demonstrating. But here's the catch. Some people learn to weaponize that loyalty. They understand that you'll give them endless chances. That you won't leave even when you should. That your standards for others are somehow different from your judgments about people you don't care about. So they push. They test how far they can go. How much they can hurt you before you actually leave. And because you're so loyal, you keep proving to them that the answer is further. Further than you thought possible. Further than is healthy. Further than preserving any part of your own well-being. The people who understand you most deeply often use that understanding of your loyalty against you. They know exactly what you'll forgive. They know exactly what excuse you'll accept. They know exactly how to position their betrayal, so you'll understand it, accept it, and keep showing up. Your loyalty becomes the mechanism that destroys you. The sixth phenomenon is what we might call the understanding paradox. And this reveals something truly tragic about certain relationships. The person you understand so completely, the person you've read with such depth, the person you know better than they know themselves in some ways. That person may understand you deeply too, but they use that understanding differently. They understand what you need, and they deliberately don't give it. They understand how to hurt you, and they do it strategically. They understand exactly what words will wound you because they know how deeply you feel everything. They understand your boundaries, and they violate them, because they know you won't leave. The most dangerous people in your life are not the ones who misunderstand you. They're the ones who understand you completely, and choose to use that understanding as a weapon. Because with most people you can assume they don't know better. They're not deliberately cruel because they don't understand the impact of their actions. But with the people who understand you profoundly, you can't use that excuse. They know exactly what they're doing. They're not accidentally hurting you. They're making calculated choices to extract, manipulate, or control based on intimate knowledge of your psychology. And that knowledge makes the betrayal so devastating. You can't even comfort yourself with the thought that they didn't understand. They understood perfectly. They just didn't care. The seventh and final phenomenon is what we might call the exit point. And this is where the Sigma INFJ superpower finally becomes completely clear. Because even though Sigma INFJs can stay in destructive patterns for remarkable lengths of time, when they finally exit, they exit with devastating clarity. There's no lingering, there's no second guessing, there's no ambivalence. When the switch flips, it flips completely. You've spent months or years trying to understand. Trying to predict different outcomes. Trying to see the good and trying to make it work through sheer force of understanding and loyalty. And then one day, you see it all clearly. Not with anger. Not with hatred. Just with absolute clarity. You see the pattern completely. You understand the mechanism entirely. You recognize the game that's been played. And in that moment, you know that understanding isn't going to change anything. Your loyalty won't transform them. Your prediction ability won't change the outcome. You've been trying to solve a problem that wasn't designed to be solved. You've been offering transformation to someone who has no interest in transforming. You've been providing understanding to someone who is deliberately refusing to understand. And when that realization hits, the exit is complete. There's no gradual fading. There's no "let me try one more time." You see the entire dynamic with perfect clarity, and you remove yourself from it with the same precision you once used to stay in it. The person doesn't get a chance to convince you to stay. They don't get to use new manipulation tactics. They don't get to make new promises. Because you're not leaving in confusion or anger. You're leaving in perfect understanding. You've read the entire situation. You've processed the entire pattern. You've extracted every lesson. And you've made a decision from absolute clarity. That exit is terrifying to the people who've been using you because they've never seen a Sigma INFJ leave like that. They've only seen you stay. They've only seen you try. They've only seen you work harder. and suddenly you're just gone. And there's no conversation about it, there's no explanation they can negotiate with. You've made your choice from a place so clear, and so sure, that there's no leverage left, no appeal that will work. Now here's what's essential to understand about all of this. These mechanisms aren't flaws. They're not weaknesses that need fixing. They're the exact structure of how Sigma INFJ consciousness works. The same ability to read people perfectly that makes you vulnerable to exploitation is also what allows you to see through systems, recognize manipulation, understand hidden patterns, and navigate incredibly complex terrain. The same loyalty that can be weaponized is also what allows you to form profound connections and demonstrate something most people never manage to embody: actual integrity. The same ability to understand people deeply is what gives you access to the truth that most people never perceive. You can't have the gift without the vulnerability. They're not separate things. They're the same architecture expressing itself in different directions. What you need to understand is this: being destroyed by people you understand perfectly isn't a personal failure. It's not a sign that you're too trusting, too naive, or too broken. It's a sign that you're operating with psychological and emotional sophistication that most people simply don't match. The destruction doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because you're trying to offer transformation to people who aren't interested in transforming. It happens because you're trying to apply loyalty to people who see loyalty as weakness. It happens because you're trying to use your understanding to predict outcomes that depend on someone else's choices, not your own. And you cannot control someone else's choices, no matter how perfectly you understand them. Here's what the Sigma INFJs who have survived their deepest betrayals understand. The problem was never that you understood them. The problem was that you stayed after you understood them. You kept trying after you saw the pattern. You kept offering loyalty to someone who was weaponizing your devotion. You kept being what they needed, instead of being what you needed. The wisdom isn't in understanding them better. The wisdom is in recognizing that understanding someone doesn't obligate you to save them. Reading someone's pain doesn't mean you're responsible for fixing it. Seeing someone's potential doesn't mean you need to wait for them to actualize it. The Sigma INFJs who reclaim their power are the ones who learn to use their understanding not as a reason to stay, but as information for whether to leave. They're the ones who recognize that their loyalty is a choice, not an obligation. They're the ones who understand that they can read someone perfectly and still decide that person isn't worth their energy. Because that's the real Sigma INFJ power, not the ability to understand people. Every intelligent person can develop that. The real power is the ability to understand someone completely and then walk away. Because you've seen clearly that they will not change, that they will not understand you in return, and that they will continue to exploit what makes you beautiful. That's the freedom the exit point brings. That's what the destruction actually accomplishes. It teaches you the final lesson. You cannot save people with understanding. You cannot transform people with loyalty. You cannot force different outcomes through prediction and effort. What you can do is see clearly, choose consciously, and move decisively. And that combination of abilities makes you not vulnerable. It makes you dangerous to anyone trying to exploit you. Because the moment they've lost your trust, the moment you've seen the pattern completely, the moment you've understood that understanding isn't enough, you're gone. Completely. Irrevocably. Finally, so if you're a Sigma INFJ watching this, I want you to hear this. You're not too understanding. You're not too loyal. You're not too much. You're exactly as understanding and loyal as you need to be. What you need to learn is when to apply that understanding to make decisions, not to make excuses. When to apply that loyalty to yourself and the people who actually reciprocate. When to use your reading ability to recognize that someone isn't worth understanding anymore. You are not broken by the people who've hurt you. The experience is refining you. Every destruction teaches you something about the limits of understanding. Every betrayal clarifies your ability to read the truth. Every exit point strengthens your capacity to see clearly and choose consciously. You're not a victim of your own nature. You're developing into something more powerful. A Sigma INFJ who has survived betrayal is a Sigma INFJ who can read people, understand patterns, and walk away with perfect clarity. That's not brokenness. That's mastery. Which of these phenomena hits closest to home? Which one made you recognize a pattern you've been living? Which one made you realize someone in your life has been weaponizing the very thing that makes you beautiful? Tell me in the comments. I want to know which destruction taught you the most. And if this resonated with you, subscribe. Because we're going to keep exploring the psychology of rare personality types, the mechanisms of how people exploit depth, and the wisdom that comes from understanding yourself completely. More importantly, subscribe, because you deserve to be part of a community where your rarity is celebrated, where your loyalty is valued, and where your understanding is not weaponized, but cherished. You're Sigma INFJ. You're rare, you're powerful, and you deserve people who get that.